Welcome to Thursday's Step 10 and 11 meeting of Cocaine Anonymous. Step 10. Continue to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. It is now with great pleasure that we introduce our first speaker, MJ, who is going to share around Step 10 for 20 minutes. Over to you, MJ.
Oh, thank you so much, Janie. Hi, everybody. My name is MJ and I'm an addict. My sobriety date is the 2nd of January 2023. So in a couple of weeks, God willing, I'll be celebrating 3 years of continued sobriety. I have a sponsor who knows that he's my sponsor. And I sponsor other men and women when they allow me to. You know, sponsorship is one of the greatest gifts of this program. Before I begin, I'd like to express a bit of gratitude, if I may. I want to thank Janie, first of all, for asking me to speak today. Katie, I want to thank you as well for being such a steady support in my sobriety. And I want to say thanks to Jacqui, who agreed to come along and speak with me today, and who I learned is actually my sober twin. She lives thousands of miles across the world, yet when we had a chat, we realised that we had so much more in common than we ever could have imagined. And finally, you know, I want to thank God. You know, I want to thank God for giving me enough grace, even when it didn't look like it, to find Cocaine Anonymous and the strength to pick up this program and this way of life that has saved my life, quite literally. So step 10. Sobriety these days, you guys, is no longer about drinking or using for me. That's not my battle. It's not. You know, today my battle is me, my thoughts, my reactions, my fear, my ego, and my spiritual condition. You know, my sponsor likes to say that we have to watch the opponent. And the truth is that the opponent is me. Step 10 keeps me spiritually fit, emotionally sober and sane. You know, when I practice step 10, I get those promises, right? I am in a position of neutrality, safe, protected, and I'm free from all of those old insane ideas that I used to have. You know, it places me in what the book talks about, the sunlight of the spirit, you know, that warm place. You know, I like to refer to it as living in God's playground, you know, where it's sunny, you know, the grass is green, I can feel the wind on my face. You know, I don't know about you guys, but the playgrounds that I used to play in were really dark and miserable. You know, the swings were rusty. There's always a puddle of water at the end of the slide, and the merry-go-round was nothing but misery, pain and suffering. I suffer with a spiritual malady, so an internal soul sickness, which shows up as the book describes it in 4 ways: selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. You know, and when I drift spiritually and I'm not in a good place, how do those symptoms manifest? They manifest in that restlessness, that irritability, and that discontent. You know, and these 3 things for me are the alarm bell saying, hold on a minute, MJ, you're drifting here. You know, something's not quite right. And so I need to practice step 10 daily, and not just daily, sometimes multiple times a day, depending on what kind of a day I'm having. You know, today I've had a day where I've been in step 10 quite a lot. I've got quite a lot of things going on, both at work, both in the charity shop that I volunteer in today, with friends in recovery, with my family, you know, and I have to practice this every day, you know, because if I'm not practicing step 10, what do? I start justifying behaviour. I'm creating stories in my head, and I'm imagining scenarios that just aren't real. You know, the truth is that my head will take me all over the place. So I need to do one of a few things. You know, I have to write it down, I have to admit to somebody else, and I have to discuss. You know, and sometimes discussing means more than once. I could talk about the same thing a few times. Discussing sometimes means I have to talk about it more than once. You know, and when I do that, what happens? The truth becomes bigger than the stories that my mind tells me. You know, step 10 keeps me grounded in reality and not in my imagination, not in the things that are not true. There's a little process that I like to use for step 10, and it's continue, improve and practice. You know, I have to continue to do this stuff because recovery doesn't stop, not like I thought it did. You know, I thought I'd come in here, I thought I'd get these 12 steps, I'd get a little certificate at the end, I'd wave you all goodbye, go back to what I thought was a really great life, and that would be it. You know, I don't graduate from this stuff. I have to continue to do it. I improve. You know, my growth comes from improvement. My growth comes from pain. My growth comes from experiencing things that are uncomfortable. And I practice. Why? Because I have to. You know, my life depends on consistency today, and not just when it's easy, you know, but when times are difficult as well. I have to continue to do this every single day. I didn't really want to talk about God when I got in here. I didn't like it. You know, I came in the rooms, I saw the scrolls on the wall, and I thought, do you know what? Not really my bag, that. You know, I didn't trust it, I didn't like it, I didn't understand it. As far as I was concerned, I was praying all the time I was out there, God, please help me. And he didn't do nothing for me. Didn't do a thing. You know, so I saw that God word, and I thought that you lot were mad. I thought you were all part of a cult, and I wanted out. But I stuck around because I saw something working in you. I saw the smiles on your faces. I saw that you were enjoying life genuinely. and I wanted a bit of that. And as I went through the steps, something started to shift. You know, and by the time I get to step 10, you know, I'm in God's playground, right? I'm standing in the sunlight. I'm feeling the grass between my feet, you know, and the wind on my face. And I didn't even realise I was there, if the truth be told. You know, I go through this process and it's all a bit of a whirlwind and I'm not really understanding what's going on. But by the time I get to step 10, I've got this sort of conception of a God that I'm choosing to believe in, right? I've cleared house and I've taken a look at myself and then I've gone out and I've made amends. You know, and then I get to a place where I'm connected to God. You know, and when I'm connected to God, I feel calm, I feel like I'm being directed, I feel safe, and I feel free. You know, when I'm disconnected, I feel a tightness in my chest, I feel fear, I overthink, and I get a big sense of irritation. You know, I call my discomfort my God sense of humour. It's like God's giving me a nudge, right? Saying, hey, MJ, come on, you know, you better come back, you know. Because for me, if I think of my God as punishing and unforgiving, then every time I do something wrong, I'm not going to want to put it right. Whereas when I think about my God having a sense of humour, it's like, oh, okay, joke's on you, MJ. What have we got to do in order to get back to where we need to be? You know, the truth is that the God that I didn't want has become my best friend. You know, it's the one present, the one constant in my life that always puts me back to the truth. I like to talk about step 10 as being my God compass. You know, it points me to whichever step I need to be in at any one given time. Why? You know, step 4 reminds me that from a step 10, I might need to go to step 4 to do some inventory. You know, from step 10, I might need to go to step 5 for some honesty to tell on myself, right? From step 6 and 7 is that willingness and humility. Have I had enough of an arse whooping, right, in order to feel enough pain to be willing to let go of that defect? And am I humble enough to actually let go of it? And then steps 8 and 9, why? For amends. You know, because I am human, I am perfectly imperfect, I make mistakes, but thankfully I've got a program today and I can make amends when I've done something wrong. You know, step 10 keeps me right sized today. You know, it keeps me honest and it keeps me practicing these spiritual principles that we talk about. You know, and there's so many different spiritual principles. But for me, it as my grand sponsor says, and I think she's on this meeting, it never gets more complicated than one, right? And what is the first principle of Cocaine Anonymous? It's honesty, right? And for me, the person that I need to be honest with the most is myself. The book talks about people that can't be honest with themselves are the ones that don't get well. They're constitutionally incapable of being honest. You know, if I'm not prepared to continuously look at me, my opponent, this woman sat right here speaking for you today, if I'm not willing to continue to look at myself daily, multiple times a day, if I need to, then nothing changes. You know, I fall back into bad habits, my head starts to tell lies to me, and I'm off to the races, you know, and eventually that's going to lead me back to a drink or a drug. You know, like I said to you today, drink and drug isn't my problem. It's my thinking. But if I was to allow my thinking to carry on for longer than it needs to, I have no doubt in my mind that drink and drugs is where I will end up. You know, and that ended really badly for me, you guys. You know, at the end of my using, I found myself, the fall from grace was quite big for me. Right, I went from a career, a husband, a family, a big house on a gated development, you know, fancy supercar in the drive, right, to a mattress on the floor. On my own, isolated, with nothing. I cannot forget where I come from. There is a deep connection between steps 10 and 11, and I'm not going to talk about step 11 very much because my wonderful twin Jacqui's going to come in and do that in a minute, you know. But if I want conscious contact with God in step 11, I've got to unblock myself through step 10. You know, step 10 clears the way and step 11 deepens the connection. Self-examination is imperative. There's a line in the 12 and the 12 talk that talks about the prayer and meditation combined with self-examination provides us with an unshakable foundation for life. I need to do them both together. You know, today, step 10 impacts my family. Do you know that? It's not only transformed me, it's transformed the atmosphere all around me. You know, my daughter's a really good example of that. She went through a situation last week. She was absolutely petrified. Absolutely petrified. You know, but today my daughter is learning to react not from fear. You know, I've watched her pause, breathe and make decisions from clarity instead of panic. You know, she's learning from my example, not my advice. I'm no good at advice. I'm no good at advice. You know, today I'm a living example of this program, and sometimes I use words. You know, that ripple effect is amazing. It really is. You know, my whole family uses step 10. You know, they look at their behaviour, they own their part, and they make things right. You know, this is what this stuff is about for me today. You know, in order to stay well, I have to practice this stuff in all of my affairs. You know, I hear people say, I have to give it away in order to keep it. Keep what? You know, for me, I have to give it away. I have to practice it. I have to display this stuff in all of my affairs to even get it. If I'm not practicing this stuff, if I'm not walking it out daily, if I'm not matching my feet with my mouth, then I'll get in trouble. You know, I practice spiritual principles openly and consistency in every single aspect of my life. You know, today, I'm so grateful, so grateful for the life that I've got. I couldn't have even imagined with this little finite mind of mine what my life looked like today. I couldn't. You know, I've got my own business. I've got my own home. I've got a mattress, but it's on a bed base, right, in a bedroom with furniture and curtains. You know, I volunteer in a charity shop, right? I'm a mum to my two daughters today. I'm a daughter to my mother, right? I'm celebrating Christmas in a way that I never have before. You know, I get to do this stuff. You know, I like to say that I do CA for a living so that I get a life. I do this stuff for a living so that I get a life. I have to do this every single day. You know, and what have I gained from this fellowship? I've gained a relationship with a loving God, you know, my Father, my Creator. And I think about my relationship with God, and I compare it to that of a father, and I think about my relationship with my children. And listen, my children could do no wrong. You know, they could do anything, and I would never judge them. I would always forgive them. So when I'm looking at myself in step 10 and I'm thinking about that God sense of humour, I have to say, do you know what, right? You've done all right. You've done the best that you could. But let's put it right. Let's put in those corrective measures that we have available to us as a result of living and breathing this stuff on a daily basis in order to clear up that wreckage, in order to keep close to him. You know, today I get a peace in my heart that I can't even begin to explain. You know, I get a sense of warmth in the pit of my stomach every single day. I get emotional sobriety today as a result of doing this stuff. I didn't have that for the first 18 months of my sobriety. I came in here, I took your tea and coffee, I sat down in your meetings, I had your biscuits, right, and I enjoyed myself. But I went home from those meetings, I would curl myself up in a ball in my bed, and I would literally cry myself to sleep, thinking about my next meeting, praying to the God that I didn't understand or that I didn't want, that everything was going to be all right until then. But today I have genuine emotional sobriety, and a lot of that is because of step 10. I have the tools available to me to deal with the situation when it's presented to me. I don't have to make knee-jerk decisions. I don't have to act on impulse. You know, I've got a purpose today. My primary purpose in this fellowship is to carry the message to the still suffering addict. And my primary purpose as well is to practice these principles in all my affairs, in everything that I do, in my business, in my home, and with you guys. As a result of that, I get a connection, I get a sense of unity that I've never experienced. You know, I thought I had friends, but I didn't. You know, today I've got genuine friends. Genuine people that care about me and my feelings, sometimes a bit too much because they tell me things that I don't want to hear when I go to them with a step 10, right? And I'm asking them to correct my thinking, and I'm asking them to call me out on my BS, right? Because they care about me. They care about me more than my feelings, right? And it's really important to have that little group of people. Yes, my sponsor is there for me, but he's not there all the time. You know, he's a very busy man. It's important that I've got some closed-mouth friends that I can talk to about this stuff, because I am perfectly imperfect. But I have got really wonky thinking still. And it's still so very important for me to discuss this stuff with these people that I trust implicitly to guide me on the right path. You know, I've got a life beyond anything that I could have ever imagined. And I don't ever want to go back to that. You know, and because I don't ever want to go back to that, I must continue to do this work every single day. Multiple times a day, if I need to. Repeatedly, the same thing, again and again and again. Because I don't know about you guys, right? But I do something. I get myself in trouble, or I put myself in a situation, and I go, oh, okay, yeah, I've dealt with that. But then I have to go through it again, and maybe again, and maybe a few times more in order to get the lesson. But as a result of being in this fellowship, as a result of actually understanding what step 10 is, because I didn't have step 10 when I started working with my most current sponsor. It was one of the first questions that he first asked me, what does your step 10 look like? And I kind of went, not really sure. Today I know what step 10 means. Step 10 is facing my opponent. Step 10 is facing me. And step 10 provides me with corrective measures in order to unblock me and all of my wonky stuff that I go through, and get that conscious contact with my God and my understanding, the God that I didn't want. You know, step 10 keeps me in this beautiful playground that I like to talk about. You know, and I genuinely feel the sun on my face. I really do every day. You know, sometimes it's miserable outside. Sometimes it is. You know, life doesn't get better, I do. You know, I've still faced some really trying times in my sobriety. But no matter what, I don't have to pick up a drink or a drug today. I have a solution today. And for me, that starts with step 10. A lot of the time, step 10 can take me to step 12. Am I being that selfish? Am I working with someone else? No, it's like I said, it's my compass, guys. You know, and I might have a different conception to any one of you guys out there, and that's all right. That's all right. I've come for your entertainment tonight, not for knowledge. You know, this is just my opinion. This is just the way that I work my program and my step 10. You know, for me, step 10 keeps me in that playground. It keeps me in the sunlight of the spirit. And I will continue to practice. I will continue to improve. And I will continue step 10 every single day, multiple times a day, if I have to. I know that I have to. And in order to stay well, in order to have everything that I've got in my life today, that's what I have to do. Thank you so much for listening, guys. My name is MJ, and I'm a very grateful addict.
Thank you so much, MJ. Absolutely amazing. You know, step 11, sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. It now gives me great pleasure to welcome our second speaker tonight, Jacqui, who will now share around step 11 for 20 minutes. Jacqui, the Zoom is all yours, my dear.
So glad to be here. I'm Jacqui, and I'm an alcoholic, and so happy to be here today. Janie and Katie, all that you've done and all that you do and all those behind the scenes, keeping us safe, I say thank you. My twin, it's amazing. The exact same day. I wonder about the time. MJ, it's just phenomenal, and nothing is a coincidence in God's economy. We are here. And I'd like to open up with the set-aside prayer, if I could, in practicing what I've learned in step 11, what I'm living, which is step 11. And so if you just join me for a second. Collective Spirit, I ask you to come into this room and gather us together to set aside everything we think we know, everything we think we know about our disease, everything we think we know about our recovery, everything we think we know about each other individually, collectively, everything we think we know about the steps, so that we may see the truth, have a new experience, knowing nothing, with an open mind. And this I ask and say, amen. Step 11, purpose. My purpose for life. I understand, going through the steps, that this is giving back is what I was supposed to do. I'm going to share my experience to getting to this place and how I work through it and then how I live it. There is no greater. I came into this room at 63. My practice, I came in as a Christian, and I prayed the God that I learned from my great Aunt Hattie. The God of my understanding was a transactional God. I did well. I got rewarded. I didn't, and I got punished. I was sick, like most of us, broken. And when I got sober on Zoom. And one of the first things I learned was to pray. Coming in, my prayers were to die in my sleep, because I didn't want my children, who I adopted when they were 3, 5, and 6, to find me dead from suicide. I prayed for my husband to come back, who had died 5 years prior to. I prayed to God to forgive whatever I had done to bring my soul back into happiness. I had the foxhole prayers, right? That's what I did. It's what I knew. It's how I survived. I'm a successful businesswoman. Grew up in group homes and foster homes. And I would pray to God when I was afraid. And I created these character defects, what I call my armor to survive. With the God of my understanding then, I prayed. I asked for him to keep me safe. And when that didn't happen, I just lived with it. So I became a very successful person from nothing to this woman who ran a multi-million-dollar business, to a woman who adopted children as a single person and who got married late in life and who lost a husband. And all of that, I thought I was praying, but I was always asking for me, not for others. Not only did I ask God for me, but I asked God for exactly what I wanted for everybody else. That was prayer for me, for coming in this room. So in meditation, let's share about that before I go into what I learned in the room. Meditation was humming. It was nothing wrong with it, but I kept following the bubbles that I was trying to learn how to follow. My mind would never settle. And then I learned, okay, well, your mind doesn't have to settle, so you follow it where it goes. And in every instant, that selfishness, that self-seeking, that individual was in that meditation. That's where I was. So now to live in step 11. You know, they say steps 1 through 9. I heard this the other day from a good friend of mine, and I'm sure he heard it from others. Steps 1 through 9 is to correct the wreckage of my past. Steps 10, 11, 12 is to correct the wreckage of my present. I learned in 10 how to watch for my selfishness, my resentment, fears, and all. And I learned in 11 how to ask God for direction to take this from me. Now let me share with you my first prayer. The first connection in the steps was in step 2. I'll never forget it. And we asked God. In fact, I have this little thing here, and you guys need to forgive me when I kind of look at notes. I was diagnosed with Wernicke-Korsakoff syndrome in 2020, and Wernicke is reversed, so it's extreme alcoholism that attacks the brain, and Wernicke is reversible, and Korsakoff is wet brain. So I was on my way to wet brain in 2020. And the doctor, and of course I went in and they asked me if I drank. I said, sure, I do 2 or 3 a day or whatever the case. I couldn't walk, I couldn't see. And the doctor finally came in and said, bullshit. He said, you have something called Wernicke-Korsakoff. You are an extreme alcoholic, and if you continue to drink, you will die. I said, bullshit. And you want to talk about cunning, baffling, and powerful. So from 2020 to 2023, I drank. I continued to drink. Even after hearing that. So if you see me pick up things or look down, it's because I'm still working on bringing my brain back, which also makes it so simple to keep it simple. So so I have this thing of prayers and the book, starting from the second step prayer all the way to the 12th step prayer. And I'm not going to read them all, but I will tell you the first one I recognize is the second step prayer. And this we found in How It Works, right? We stood at the turning point. We asked, which is what we do when we pray. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. His protection and care with complete abandon. That was the first prayer that I was introduced in the steps. The third step is where I had a spiritual experience. My sponsor had me immediately say the third step prayer every day, every single day. And one morning, when I woke up, I would thank God again thank God for my sobriety. And then I would say the third step prayer. And one day, it was not my voice. I heard another voice come out of me. And that was all I needed to know, that there was something greater than I. So then I could immerse myself even deeper into the program. And I did. I was doing the Q-dog, as they say. I was all in. They say jump, I say how high. Service, I'm in service. I don't even know how to greet, but I was a greeter. As I mentioned, I was I got sober on AABC, and they said greet. My sponsor said serve, so I did it, right? But back to step 11 and how I got there. So I had that experience. That was my white light experience. There's a fifth step prayer. Oh, the fourth step prayer. There's all kinds of prayers there, right? There's a resentment prayer. There's a fear prayer. And then for a while, I didn't realize that I had the resentments that I had. They kept coming. But there's a resentment prayer. There's the fear prayer, and there's a conduct prayer. And when I did my fourth step, I had to list those prayers according to who I was working with, who I was dealing with at the time. So that's prayers. Then, of course, the 8th and 9th, their page, I can put it in chat, the pages for those prayers. When I have a spiritual mentor and I take her workshop, I've taken it a few times and hopefully we'll get through it this time. But the very first thing she taught me was a version of that set-aside prayer, which was, and it's entitled Lay Aside. And I love that because back then you lay something gently aside versus setting it aside, giving it to God. You're laying it over here. And that was kind of like how I came in. I had this fearing God-fearing notion. I sat God next to me and I said, look, I don't know if this is going to work, but I've got to give it a chance. And if I mess up, please forgive me. And then the floodgates were open. So we get to the 11th step. And so that was my prayer life. And then my meditation life I shared. The 11 steps is prayer and meditation. How do you do it? What do you do and why is it necessary? And it's necessary because this constant contact with God is what keeps me grounded. It's what keeps me doing exactly what God chose for me to do. And I call my higher power God. Chose for me to do. And that is to give back. Gave me real purpose, not goals and objectives, not performing. But a relationship where I wake up and say, today, I say. Back then I said, I give this to you. Take my will. Give me what you want. Thank you for allowing me to wake up, whatever. And now I just say, where will I see you today? And use me as your vessel. And that's how I live. Meditation used to be what I told you, all those things, the bubble, those. But now today, meditation is silence. Pause, pray, proceed. There's a very big God in whatever the pause is, and that's listening. I listen for God. I've grown now in the program to what they call a contemplative prayer or two-way prayer, but I had to grow to this point by practicing. So when we talk about practicing the principles in all our affairs, we start out with prayer from 3 to 7. And if you notice in our big book, we don't say amen until 7. All those steps, that whole process was one big prayer. And I lived in that. And then meditation now, the silence. I laugh with the God of my understanding today. I will go to Walmart. I open the door and say, you go first. That's a joke. I will, one day I was cooking, making collard greens, playing Vivaldi. I decided for the day I would be classical music for the day and doing the electric slide. Now, if that's not a combination for a connection with something greater than and I started laughing with the God of my understanding. I said, you have a sense of humor. So the long and the short of it is getting through the steps, cleaning your side of the street, cleaning my side of the street, understanding that there is indeed a relationship that I get to have. What do they say? You get to live 2 lives in 1 lifetime. And so I had the first 63 years, a lot of research, a lot of what people would say success. And then I've had the last 3 years of doing what I was experiencing throughout the steps, not just doing them. And they say it's action. Yeah, but it's also living those steps to this day to be able to do what I'm supposed to do, and that's to give this gift away. And when we say give it away, when I say give it away, I mean live it. I can't, while MJ was talking, I was so focused. And then right when she was wrapping up, I started saying, please give me the right words, the right thoughts, the right actions. I have to live in this place. If it says, don't gossip, you don't do it. It's an insult to this relationship, this friendship that I have with God. So in having the opportunity, I don't know how much time I have, having the opportunity to work through the steps, to live today in this peace and this joy, because all I said was I surrender. I am willing to hear and to practice, not only practice the principles in all my affairs. When I get to 11, it doesn't end. The relationship I have with the God of my understanding only gets deeper as long as I remain teachable, as long as I keep myself open to hearing. They tell the story about there's these 2 gentlemen, one goes to an AA meeting and he's grumbling about people and how they works, and he's grumbling about the preamble and the like. And then another individual's in the same meeting and he is listening. God's taught us listening to the shares, because God speaks to each and every one of us. Listening to the shares, and oh man, had the tears for how it works. And when they left, they both had an experience, and they both were right in what they experienced. But how did they walk in the room? Sometimes when I'm anxious, I say, God, will you go in before me? Guide my words, my thoughts, my actions. Love is this program. God is love. I know it's probably some cliche kind of thing. And you cannot be angry, be disloyal. You can't love. It gives you a smile, doesn't it? Joy. Yeah, life is lifey. Shit happens. Stuff happens. There is no doubt about that. But relying on this power, understanding that every single step that's ordained, every single step by anybody, by the folks in this room, by people, the lawnmower guys outside, that step right now, this moment, is ordained by God. So I can't doubt it. I can't question it. I just have to accept it. And I learned that through prayer and meditation. I accept it because it's God's will. God's will for them, God's will for me, God's will for us. And in that acceptance, I stay spiritually fit because I do these things. I pray, I talk, I ask, I listen. And I live, and I love. And there's no greater compliment, no greater compliment than I can give to the God of my understanding. But thank you. It's just thank you, to be clear. So with that, I say thank you for letting me share.
Wow. Thank you, Jacqui. Absolutely beautiful. And it is now the spiritual discussion time between our two speakers. So MJ's going to come back in with you, Jacqui, and you guys can use this time however you feel fit with your spirits. I'll leave it over to you guys.
Thank you so much, Janie. Hey, Jacqui.
Sweet soul.
We haven't talked about this. We haven't spoken about it. So what you get is gonna be straight from God, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Jacqui, we spoke about this when we were messaging. I didn't tell Jacqui this was a CA meeting, guys. I actually share an AA home group with Jacqui, and I asked her to speak, and then the following day, I was like, "Oh God, damn it! I didn't tell her that it was a CA meeting." And we started talking, and she told me about the fact that she had come over here for a convention, and that she knew a lot of you guys, and that she had come over with my grand sponsor of all people, and we said something, didn't we, Jacqui, about there not being any coincidences. Should we talk about that for a little bit?
Mm-hmm. There are none. I mean, when you think about it, for me anyway, I'm afraid to think of people that I may not want to hear from, right? Because it's like the minute I think of them, next thing I know, the phone's ringing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, be careful for me. Be careful what you think about. Be careful what I call it manifesting. Like when someone says something funny or something like, well, you might break a leg. I'm like, don't put that on me. Put that spoken word out there. So yeah, and I loved MJ. I didn't realize we had the exact same anniversary date, sobriety date, and so it just made it so much sweeter. But there are no coincidences that I'm in this meeting, that I met Janie and Katie and Andrew and so many folks, Paul, and then here I sit, and we do have a common beautiful soul in our journey. That's a coincidence? No. That's exactly what's supposed to be, I think.
Yeah, lovely.
Right?
Nice as that. Yeah, it's really beautiful. I love that you talk about your God having a sense of humour as well, Jacqui. I have to live by that all of the time.
Especially when I do
loved
crazy
what you said about saying, come on now, God, you go first. I really, really like that, what you said about come on, God, you go first, because I can do anything with God with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of humour that he brings me, that then softens my mind, my spirit. If I'm anxious, if I'm worried, if I'm scared, if I'm fearful,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns it into what you described, just love, and that is really cliche. It really is, but there's no fear when God's there for me. There's no
That's
fear.
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking about, step 10 with, it's continue to watch, right? And it's, for a while I was, and doing my inventory and all. And then one day it hit me that continuing to watch, I'm not watching alone, right? I'm not watching alone. God is watching with me and nudging me when these things pop up, and then I can automatically fix them. I have the tools to do so, right? Yeah. So that's why I say 10, 11, 12. That's why we go through the steps.
Yeah.
Live through the steps. I always have to say live, because we can do them. We can do them and check them off.
Yeah.
But the life in them is living them as I went through them. All right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not a linear process, is it?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes circular. For me, it becomes a never-ending journey. And for me, I spoke about it. Step 10 takes me anywhere I need to be in that circular process. It's beautiful. It really is.
Well, let me tell you what the first time I did step 10, or I was working on step 10, I found an app somewhere that graded, I'm not kidding, that graded step 10, right? And so I would get like an 85%. How do you get an 85% on step 10? And when I told my sponsor, I said, oh yeah, and I got this app. She's like, what? What? And that reminded me again, I'm trying to put puts and takes and grades on, was I living it? Was I doing it? Why was I looking for an A plus when I'm enough? I am the A plus, the D minus, and all those things in between. And I had to sit in that. So I don't know where that came from. Just wanted to share that.
There's a couple of things that come to mind there, that I am what I am. I'm perfectly imperfect. And I love that line in the book that talks about spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Right. I hear a lot of people use that as a general term in their life. Oh, but I'm getting better. I'm not perfect, but I'm getting better. But it says spiritual in front of it. And for me, I don't ever want to be spiritually perfect. Why? Because otherwise I don't need God, Jacqui.
And we're humans, and God loves human beings.
Yeah.
So perfection is not in the cards. It is living in the Spirit, living with the Spirit. And, one of the things that I have learned, no matter who's behaving or what's happening, however it's happening, that fundamental idea of God that's spoken to in our book, I look to the spirit of that individual. So I'm talking to you right now, spirit to spirit. And ain't it grand? Ain't it beautiful? Yeah. There's nothing greater. And we're just living everyday lives as normal as we can be. Right? Yeah. But with this special, I call it the special power of alcoholism that got us here, right? It's just amazing to me, and I'm in awe, yet I know it never ends. That's the great part. It never ends. My relationship, I'm doing things, I have a devotion group in the morning. I now have very, very close friends that we go into a deep, deep step 10 with one another. It's only 4 of us. Now it's 3 of us. A step 10. Deep. And that is for life. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Worry about not being connected. It's when I get disconnected and, I skip a few days, skip a few meetings, and then it's kind of like, and then I'm grumpy and I'm asking, what's going on with me? Why don't I have this connectedness? I don't have it because I'm not spiritually fit for those last 2 days. And that fitness looks like structure for me at times. It had these special moments, these soul touches that happen. I need to have them every day in one form or another, right?
Yeah, I love what you said about being blessed to be an alcoholic, to be able to live this life today. I talk about this with one of my sponsee sisters quite a lot, that I feel sorry for people that are not alcoholics and addicts, because they're in the dark, right? They don't get to experience this light, this sunlight of the spirit, the playground that I like to talk about all of the time, and I do feel so blessed every single day. And yes, there are things that come up in life, and yes, sometimes it's difficult, but I have to just hold on, MJ. Just hold on, just open your eyes and have a look at what's around you. And
the sunlight that we experience, they do get to experience it.
Really?
As we walk into a room, don't have to say a word, walking in with our higher power, no baloney, the authenticity, right? Bold and courageous, because we're walking in our authority. We're walking in the assignment. Because we're open. I'm open. I know we're not supposed to say we, but I'm open to knowing I'm a child of God and tap dancing around. I often say I want people to picture me in a green cat suit, a big afro, running down the street, clicking my heels like a leprechaun. That's what I do.
I love that.
Right? And that's what people see. I hope when I walk in a room. That joy, just for a second, right? I just love it.
Yeah. Jacqui, I just want to say thank you again for agreeing to come and speak with me today. It's been an absolute honour and a privilege, and it's been an experience that I will never ever forget, and one that will hold a place in my heart for a very, very long time, forever, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Love you. Same here.
Amazing. God bless you both. Thank you so much. It is now the Q&A part of the meeting where the rest of you guys can come in and ask the speakers any questions relating to steps 10 and 11 or what you have heard. Please be mindful to try and keep your questions to questions, so to speak. I know it's going to be very difficult with such wonderful ladies on here this evening, so if we could see some hands, there'll be a 2-minute timer put up to ask the question. So do we have any questions? Don't be shy. Fantastic. And Carlos, would you like to unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thank you, Jane, for your service and everybody else in the service, and then Jay and Jacqui for coming to talk. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm trying to get it back, so hopefully you understand me. Working to step 11. Is there any moment in time where you feel blocked or not connected, or if you're not getting through? What do? I've had several of those moments this year, and but I keep on trudging, right? But I still don't understand. Me, I'm the type of person, right? I want to figure it out. I want to troubleshoot this so it won't happen, but it continues to happen, and I haven't gotten down to the source of it. But yeah, like, are you ever blocked? Do you ever not feel connected? And if so, what do you do?
You want me to go first on that one?
You could go first, my love, of course. Yeah.
Okay, this is your house, so I'm the guest.
You go first, my love.
Okay. You know what I do? I double down. I double down, and I put pen to paper quite a bit. There's something magical that happens when I'm writing, and those are the two things. I go back to the basics. What am I asking the question? Why am I here? Doing an inventory, going back to the 4th step. That's what I do. How about you, MJ?
So for me, sometimes I get a little bit impatient. Sometimes things are not happening quite as quickly as I want them to do. But what I've learned through practice is to be patient. Sometimes I'm in the hallway and I'm waiting for the door to open, and it will open eventually. I just have to stay close to God. I have to like Jacqui said, get it on paper. Writing this stuff down is really, really important for me. I justify it in my head. When it's on the paper, it can't lie to me anymore. And then I give it to God, and I just let him do it in his time and when he's ready, and I just have to be ready. I've come across this thing lately where, yes, I'm willing, but a lot of my program now is, am I ready? and I just stay ready.
Thank you. Thanks, Carlos, for your question. And next up, we have Adam. Would you like to unmute yourself, Adam?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Adam. I'm an addict. My question is, what's both your opinions on the pause, and when do you recognise whether you're hearing God or thinking of yourself? Because I get confused with which I'm listening to sometimes. I've just got close contact. I've just found it, and I'm trying to work out which one's me and which one's God. What were your answers on that?
Shall I go first this time? For me, I get an immediate ick in my stomach. I get an immediate scream in my spirit when something's going down. And the pause for me is almost automatic, because I know that if I don't pause, I'm likely to make rash decisions. I'm likely to do things that I shouldn't. And for me, you know, I love that Jacqui talked about that two-way prayer stuff. You know, I too have been doing a lot of that lately, and for me, you know, when I sit with the answers and I'm writing the answers from God, people might say to me, MJ, is that really God? And for me, do you know what, right, if it's not God, then it's the purest form of me that there's ever going to be. You know, I sit in prayer, I ask the questions and I write the answers in two-way prayer, and I sit in meditation, in contemplation, and it goes back to what Carlos just said, is the patience. You know, I don't have to act impulsively anymore. You know, I can leave it a couple of days before I make decisions about things sometimes. I could never do that before. You know, not everything has to be done right now. And that space, that pause for me is the time that I need between my will and God's will. That's it for me.
As I mentioned earlier, there's a very big God in a small pause. That pause may be years. That pause may be just the understanding that I don't got it. I don't have it. It's not for me at this particular point. I remember sharing with someone, you know, when we go into the hallway and we have several doors in front of us, one of those doors are going to open. I'll keep walking forward, but one of those doors will open at their time. I will tell you, the way that I know, I did a two-way prayer the other day, not too long ago. And the first time I wrote it, when I read it, I knew it wasn't God. It was somehow self-justifying. It was my ego. You know, remember, our ego wants to kill us, right? Our ego does not want us in a 12-step program. So the ego will show up immediately. That's the challenge, right? So I read it, and it was like very condemning in a way. And so I kept writing. Every day I wrote the same question. And then the one day I was reading it, and it said, I'm the light in the darkness. The trust in me versus you don't want to trust in me. The language changed. Mm-hmm. And that's when I knew it was God's voice for me. That's just one example.
Lovely. Thank you. And thanks for your question, Adam. Pierce, would you like to unmute yourself? You're up next.
JD, thanks. I'm Pierce, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, thanks, Gareth. I was just wondering, I was listening to a question for a Tui. I was listening, I'm not so sure whether Tui don't put words in. Was MJ, you found, I found the word him being mentioned a good bit. And I'm wondering, has any of your sponsors, grand sponsors, grand sponsors, and all these people that tell you what you don't want to hear, told you or have told about you what that means in their program, not Pierce's program, because I do their program. And you were saying, Jacqui, about the gossip thing, you don't do the gossip. Where does that fit in with the last word in step 7? And the big question then is the MJ, with this, you work it in all your affairs, so mine, I have a conscience today, it just clicks me straight away. I wouldn't be doing it, and I more or less have a conscience. So say we're in a meeting and it comes to your attention, like that lady spoke about adopting kids and what people can go through and in the rooms, and everything's not perfect around the rooms, do you know what I mean? I wouldn't know whether you'll be aware of that, but has it ever come to your attention and you've acted on it straight away, or brought it to your whatever at night you do, and had to contact someone in a group or anything like that, saying, no, this is not good for a newcomer or anything like that, and it's not, or pulled it straight away. Did that ever come up in your step 10? And had you have to act on it or anything like that? Would that ever happen? So yeah, thanks if you've answered them, please.
Do you want me to go first, Jacqui?
Yeah, yes, because
can I just clarify one point, please? Can I clarify one point? The bit that you said at first about the God being the him, is that, do you mean us referring to God as a male? Is Pierce able to unmute again very briefly?
Yeah, has the people that tell you what you don't want to hear, the grand sponsor, and all them have.
So do you know what, Pierce? Right,
Have they told you what that is exactly?
So nobody in here has ever told me what to do.
No.
Nobody's ever told me what to do, and
no, have they explained to you what it means?
What about what it means? My God is my own conception of God, Pierce, right? And my God could be man, woman. It doesn't even have to be a human face, and yours can be whatever it is that you want it to be. But I refer to my God, why, as him, because it just makes it simple for me. and I have to keep it simple. I'm a complicated addict, mate, and in order for me to be well and stay well, I need things to be as simple as possible. Another bit of your question that you talked about having to do inventory about somebody on a meeting and it not being good for a newcomer. Boy, I've done inventory on loads of people on a meeting. Loads. We're all very unwell. We're all sick people trying to get well. We've all got our own set of problems, but what I have to remember each and every single day is that I am no better than anybody else, Pierce. And they've got their God just like I've got my God, and I trust that their God will look after them and mine will look after me. And like I said in my share, step 10 gets that ego out of the way. It takes away my opinion and it puts it on paper. And then I'm able to use that God consciousness to accept that they are the way that they are. I don't have the right to change people. I don't have a right to think that I'm right. And I don't have a right to put my opinions on other people. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I hope, Pierce, I think I got it as well. But the God of my understanding has always been a him or he. But with my sponsees or with anyone, it's your conception of God. And so I accepted the him because in 1939, when the big book came out, it was him and referred to him. And I kept it simple. My God, some days is universe. It's divine. I don't know what you call those, but the hims, hers, he's, those kinds of things don't matter as much to me. As far as gossip, the reason that shows up in my inventory is because, or the reason I have a challenge with that is it's about my ego and my judgment, and those are just should not be part of who I am. That's not God. And so when I entertain it, I am entertaining not godlike behavior. When I engage, I am blocking the sunlight of the spirit. It's those things that I don't want to enter into my spirit, and I try real hard to stay away from it. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's where that comes in for me.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks for your question, Pierce. Nikki, you're next. Would you like to unmute yourself, dear?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Nikki and I'm an alcoholic. Firstly, both of you, thank you so much. That was absolutely beautiful. Honestly, I was just blown away. I got so much from both of your shares. My question is around step 10 for either of you, both of you. So in the interest of it being an honest programme, I found sometimes when I do a step 10, if I've been, either if it's a resentment or a fear and something that's really riled me up, I've done a step 10 as it's suggested. I've done it straight away. And sometimes I'm still stuck in that. Say, for example, it's a resentment. I'm still stuck in it. And I'm doing my step 10 quite reluctantly. And I find that I'm still probably blocked because I'm still sort of sat in it. So I do it. And then I may find I may have to do it again a bit later, maybe even the next day. So I guess the question really is to you both. Firstly, please tell me I'm not alone, and I'm not the only one that sometimes does a step 10 and it's, you know, it's a really bad step 10. Is there such a thing as a bad step 10? And I guess the real question is, do you think it's better to do the step 10 immediately as suggested, even if you're still sat in it? Or do you think you should wait until, you know, you feel a bit more unblocked, I guess, and do it? So that, yeah, I guess that's my question.
Well, I'll take that one, MJ, first, if you don't mind. I think there's a spot check inventory, you know, as we go forward. There's a spot check inventory which keeps me able to not get to the evening, but to do an inventory. If I do it all day, then I don't have that blockage, as much of a blockage. Now, I've done step 10s where I knew I had to speak to I knew I had to speak to someone, and I've even chosen certain people that I thought would would give me what I wanted to hear, but thank God they don't, right? And I have to make an amends. I mean, remember, we're human, so in the inventory process, there are mind things. The ego gets in there, and somehow you know, I don't want to do them, but I have to do them. And that's when I know I have to do a spot check inventory. I have to do an inventory at night. I do an inventory in the car, you know, and right now I was doing an inventory of my last 6 months. You know, where have I shown up? Where haven't I shown up? And do I need to do something different? And so, not alone, no, and there's no perfect way, but it has to be done to stay in spiritual fit condition for me. MJ, what you got?
Thanks, Jacqui. I did mention, I can't remember the lady's name, I'm so sorry. I have to do the same step 10 over the same issue again and again from time to time, because I have to experience enough pain to go back from 10 to 6 and 7 to have the willingness to have it removed. And I only get the willingness from the pain and the discomfort, and then the humility to let God take it, because I don't know what I'm doing. I need God to take good and bad in step 7, right? But I need the willingness in step 6, which is given to me by the indication in step 10, and then the humility to let it go in step 7. But the more that I discuss it, the more that I keep looking at it, the more I start to see it. You know, I might not see straight away the particular element that's causing me to have that exact problem time and time again. But the more that I look at it, the more I continue to discuss it. I was having a conversation with a sponsee just a couple of days ago, and we were on the phone for about 15-20 minutes about something that's been coming up for her again and again and again. And then suddenly she had this realisation, oh my God, that person reminds me of my mum. You know, and those are the sorts of things that happen. But they only happen if, you know, that's a big 2-letter word that's littered all over this book, I continue to watch. You know, I have to continue to watch for that behaviour. I hope that answers your question.
Lovely. Thank you. Thanks, Nikki, for your question. Lucy's up next. We're going to reduce question time to 1.5 minutes here. If Lucy, you can unmute, darling.
Hi, Janie. Thank you. I'm really sorry. I'm absolutely full of cold, if you can understand me, ladies. Thank you for taking the meeting, Janie. Thank you for the shares. I've only just come into step 10 sort of 2 days ago, and I don't think I'm quite getting my head around it. So I've reached out to my sponsor, and I've asked to go through it again. What I'm not getting around step 10 is that I understand that a spot check is if I get a resentment in the moment, but what if I get a resentment of a scenario that is fictional? I'm finding that I'm having quite a lot of these at the moment. Do I then need to go and do a step 4 on that? Or do I do a spot check on that? Because it's not real.
Can I go first? Step 10 isn't just about catching resentments for me. I'm not going to talk about anyone else. For me, the book talks about 4 things: dishonesty, resentment, selfishness, and fear. And a lot of the time, Lucy, what is fear? It's false evidence appearing real. 9 times out of 10, fear is because I'm not going to get something, or something's not going to turn out the way that I want it to. I don't know what your resentment, imaginary or not, is, but I have to continue to watch for all of those, you know, and a resentment can bring up all of those, the selfishness, the dishonesty and the fear. You know, sometimes it's just isolated to one of those, but it's really important for me to look at all of those and discover, you know, and it's like we've said a couple of times, I have to continue to do it. You know, sometimes multiple times. It doesn't always become clear straight away. But thankfully, I've got a program today and a step 10 that can take me wherever I need to go to figure it out. And I've got you guys to help me do that. And God, most importantly.
And I just will add to that, you know, real or fancied, you're absolutely right. It's and having the capability to ask God to remove it. So I hope that helps.
Love that. Thank you, Nikki, for your question. Love your answers. I'm up next. I'm going to ask you a little question. Anyone that knows me knows I love an opposite. Young light terminal, we called them enantiodromia. You know, wow. And the Greeks liked it as well. But, you know, and then of course you've got yin and yang, which is us, isn't it, MJ? And for everything there is an opposite. And I love the fact that step 11 was written, you know, by the collective 86. And I think every single word was put in there that it was either channeled. There was no coincidence or accidents. And in step 11 it says, sort through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God. And it's the word conscious, because they could have written that without putting that word in there. So what is the opposite to conscious? It's unconscious, you know. So for me, it tells me that even before I knew that I had this relationship with God, I was having one with him or her or whatever, you know, with this love without even realising it. Now that you do have this conscious contact with your Creator, with love, with the Spirit, do you now have a rear view mirror, you know, a sight of this unconscious contact? Just interests me.
Can I go first, Jacqui?
Mm-hmm.
I've got I've got a really good example of this one, Janie. I talked about not wanting God and not believing in God and God not doing anything for me, but I was in an 8-year abusive relationship, and a week before I came into recovery, I got the strength to kick out my abuser. And the day after, it was Christmas Eve. I had gone to midnight mass with my family my whole life until I moved out. On that Christmas Eve, Janie, I went to midnight mass the day after I kicked out my abuser. I don't know why I went there. I don't know what led me there. I didn't want God. I wasn't looking for God. I was unconscious. Right? I was using, I was drinking, I was absolutely off my nut in there. But something took me there. You know, I've always had contact with God in that beautiful rear view wisdom mirror that we talk about all the time. You know, I just didn't see it back then. Today I see God in all his glory, and that he has been working in and through me and in spite of me this whole time.
You know, I'm going to echo that. I can't unsee what I've seen. So I have to accept what's happening always, consciously or unconsciously. You know, when I first started trying to learn the prayers in particular, I would play them at night as I went to sleep, or I play the song Peggy Lee Bow. Now I listen to Sarah McLaughlin does the St. Francis prayer, And because I knew it would go into my consciousness, my subconscious as I was asleep. But now that I'm awakened, I can't unsee it. I can't unsee this connection. It is now within. So I can't give you an answer to that makes any sense, and I don't want to make it up.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you very much. And Keith, you're up next, and you're going to see us out, my friend.
Yeah, thanks, Janie, for doing this meeting. Thank you two ladies for your shares. For me, I've got two little questions. The first one was for Jacqui. Was it a set-aside prayer or lay-aside prayer? There's two differences. Was the prayer you said like your own intake or from your sponsor hand passed down? Because I've heard the lay-aside prayer on another one with Big Mike D, and it was another version. I was just asking the two differences. And the second one is, me personally, my own recovery, my sober date's 22nd November 23. I was 2 years the other day. But my recovery, I don't do a lot of nightly inventory with my sponsor. And this is not for everyone, but for myself. I don't do it. Sometimes, for me, the more I'm into my step 11 and I hand it over to God, and I do reach out to my corner men, sometimes the stronger my step 11, the less I'm into my step 10, and I'm owing less apologies. Because I'm not really doing things. I'm far cry different from what I used to be. I don't know, it's like, some of my friends are like, why are you not doing nightly inventory? And I'm like, because I'm not in resentment, I'm not in fear, I'm not being dishonest, I'm not being angry. I'm totally different from what I used to be. Is it a good thing or a bad thing that I don't do it nightly? But I do hand it over to God.
Well, your first question about the lay-aside prayer, initially I would have said it exactly as it was presented to me. Now I have my own relationship with my higher power, and so I say what is in my spirit and what's in my heart. And so that may be why it sounds different. I'm sure that's why it sounded different, because that's where it came from. That's the space it came from. The nightly inventory, it is very easy. What is this? To rest on our laurels. And it was, I told you guys, started out with the 85%, with the app, and then, and it evolved over time. I started out with sharing it with my sponsor. I don't have to do that anymore, unless it's upsetting to me and I really have to have a challenge or whatever. But at the very beginning, I think it's imperative. Do it. And in fact, there was a challenge given one time in our group. We took it and we said we'd do the upon awakening and retire and when retiring for 90 days. And it was just an incredible experience. So as you evolve, that's a conversation I would have with my sponsor there. Do you feel like you're missing something? I would feel like I was missing something. And now if I do say something like, oh, everything was great today. Well, in most cases, because I do spot checks all day, I could easily say, well, I don't really need to do it tonight, but I would not do it. That's just Jacqui.
Thanks, Jacqui. Thanks for your question, Keith. For me, the more that I do step 10s, the less I have to do step 10s, if that makes any sense. Because I do get to a place where I've got this relationship with God, right? And I trust that I can hand it over to him, because my thinking has been that right-sided by continuing to do those spot checks, that I can see on the paper exactly what it is that I'm handing over. Go back to that 6 and 7 willingness, humility again. But then you talk about the step 11 review. For me, that's really important. I've got my book out. Why? Because it doesn't ask for just those 4: resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Do I owe an apology? and I kept something to myself that should be discussed with someone else? Was I kind and loving to all? What could I have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? You know, it says constructively. I don't beat myself up over it. There's no point. It's already happened. There's nothing I can do to change it. But what does that do for me? That provides me with a good positive attitude going into the next day. I can't do my upon awakening and my morning devotion if I've gone to bed feeling upset about what I did the night before. I can't, you know, and the have I been kind and loving towards all? For me, it's always no. I'm gonna give you an example why. You know, I'll go in a shop and I'll want a vape. I need a vape. Right, I vape a lot. Most of you know that. And I'll say to the cashier, "Thank you so much for the vape." You know, that might appear that I'm being loving and kind. You know, but I'm thankful because I've got what I want. Not thankful because she's come to work. Not thankful that she's actually there giving me said vape. I'm thankful because I've got what I want. You know, I look at everything constructively. That's the most important word for me today, and I think about what I can do better the next day. So I do now when somebody gives me something that I would like in the shop. So thank you so much for coming to work today. You know, something so small and so simple can make somebody's day. You know, my purpose on this earth as a child of God today, Keith, is to look after my brothers and sisters. And to share the love in my heart with them. I hope that answers your question.
God bless. Thanks, Keith, for your question. Thank you, MJ. And that's the end of Q&A, not the end of the meeting.